Welcome to another season preview. Today we have the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers put together another pretty bad year last year, and it ended on more of a high note than I think any of us thought it would. You get into this territory early in the season where Bryce Young gets benched, and he's your number one overall pick, but it's a new coach, and maybe the coach wants his own guy, and he doesn't have this affinity to Bryce Young. And I thought his days as a Carolina Panthers starting quarterback were numbered because that's just got to shoot your confidence. But his confidence was already shot. And then, by God's good graces, Andy Dalton gets in a car accident and Bryce Young comes back in as the starter. And I'm not going to sit here and say he played like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but he was probably league average. He was like a nice game managing quarterback, and he had multiple high leverage situations. Specifically, I take a look at that Atlanta Falcons game where he essentially knocked the Falcons out of the playoffs in overtime. So it certainly ended on a high note for the Panthers. And if Bryce Young can just continue being the 16th best quarterback in the NFL, the Panthers have a real shot to make the playoffs. I'm not going to say they have a real shot this year if he does that, but one more year of building around him, and I think they do. So obviously that's that with Bryce Young, and I do think that there is no question that he will be the starter for the 17 games barring injury. This is going to be the year where they just really pour everything into him. And because now he's got weapons. I don't think he's got the best wide receiver room in the NFL, but Tedero McMillan, Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, Jalen Coker, Jimmy Horn Jr. Those are the top five, and that's a really solid top five. Adam Thielen is old as rice. Old as rice? Why did I say that? I don't know why I said that. He's old as hell. And I'm expecting the big drop off to come from for him at any point. It came for Keenan Allen last year. I'm wondering if Adam Thielen is going to have that kind of year this year. I don't know, but he was really consistent last year. Um, Tedero McMillan is coming in. He's still obviously got to prove himself, but he was my wide receiver one. I really like him, and I think that he could be a difference maker. Xavier Legette, maybe with Tedero McMillan, that takes a lot of the defensive pressure off of Legette, and he can be more of a weapon. And luckily for the Panthers, Jalen Coker kind of made up for the lack of production from Legette and has given them more depth in that room. I don't know if this is a hot take, but my hot take is that there will be a 1,000-yard receiver on the Carolina Panthers. I don't know if Jalen Coker will have an even more extensive breakout. I don't know if Xavier Legette will come out of nowhere. I don't know if it'll be Tet McMillan, but it'll be one of them. Then at tight end, you've got Tommy Tremble, who is injured. You have Jatavion Sanders, who's coming off of an injury-plagued rookie season, and then you have Mitchell Evans, the rookie out of Notre Dame. In 2024, Jatavion Sanders was my tight end two behind Brock Bowers. I really liked him. And while this is Tommy Tremble's room, if Jatavion Sanders goes into week one as tight end one, I'm kind of under the impression that he doesn't get the job back because I really like his receiving upside. With that being said, though, I've said in multiple videos that I don't think the NFL is a tight end one, tight end two league anymore. I think it's just simply you have to have two tight ends that you rely upon to play a significant amount of snaps per game. And I don't think they're going to rely too heavily on Mitchell Evans, a fifth round rookie, to be that guy. I think he'll probably be that, special teams contributor, and he'll come in certain jumbo packages on the offensive side. But I think they're really going to lean into Sanders and Tremble. In terms of Tremble, there's still really no update on his back injury, so I do expect Sanders to get a bulk of the looks, at least early on in the season, and then we'll see where the team goes from there. But Sanders is going to have a runway to win this job. And then at running back, I think it's a decent room. I'm not as high on Chuba Hubbard in terms of him being a top 10 back or anything, or a back that you should pay 10 mil a year. They also signed Rico Dowdle. He was 1,000-yard rusher. I don't know how fraudulent or real that those 1,000 yards are. It was behind a really solid offensive line, and it seems whoever's in Dallas is going to get 1,000 yards. But it's a good running back too. And then Trevor Etienne out of Georgia as running back three. It's a solid group. Obviously, Chuba Hubbard is going to be your workhorse, but I think Rico Dowdle is a solid running back too. I just don't love that they paid him a decent contract. It wasn't anything crazy, but I would have loved to just make Trevor Etienne your running back too and pick up a veteran guy elsewhere. But that's splitting hairs because they had the money. They're not really in the business of competing. I'm not too concerned about them, being pressed for cash. The offensive line is an interesting one because this time last year we were saying they were one of the worst groups in all of football. I think they were improved. That starts with Robert Hunt at right guard. I think that was a great signing. And then next to him you have Taylor Moton, another really solid offensive tackle. Ikem Ekwonu is going to have to take steps forward, former top 10 pick at left tackle. Damian Lewis at left guard, and then Austin Corbett at center. Iquanu is such an interesting case study to me because he has some really high level reps, but he has some pretty low lights as well. So it's just high ceiling, low floor player, and he's got to even out. But what I want to point out is all of these players are returning players. They are returning all five starters. That is a really good sign for a unit that was projecting upwards towards the end of last year. So I expect them to get even better this year. They made some pretty big splashes in free agency on the defensive side of the ball. I want to get into it. They run a three-man front. Derek Brown, we can count as a free agent acquisition. He's going to be returning healthy. This is one of the best three techs in the NFL when healthy. So expect him to make a serious impact. I'm hoping he returns to his former self after the injury. I really like Brown as a player, and I expect him to put himself back on the map. At nose tackle, you signed Bobby Brown out of or from the Rams. This is a serviceable player. I don't think he's a difference maker, but he's an adequate starter. And behind him, you have Shy Tuttle. They also signed Tershawn Wharton to a pretty solid contract, a pretty decent contract from Kansas City. Brings a winning pedigree, and he was definitely productive for the Chiefs. It's a Spagnuolo defense, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do on a less talented unit. And then behind Wharton, you have Ashawn Robinson. As for the rushing linebackers, you have DJ Wanham on one side and Patrick Jones on the other. And then you use two day two picks on Princely Umanmielen and Nick Scorton. Now, Nick Scorton had a collapsed lung in practice, so he's going to miss some time. I don't think from the reports I saw, it's not supposed to be like threatening a major chunk of his season. I just don't know that he'll be ready to go for the first few games. Uman was a guy I was really high on. I really liked his tape. He flashed to me, and I look for him to make a serious impact immediately. At the inside linebacker positions, you signed Christian Roseboom from the Rams to be your green dot wearer, and then next to him, you have Trevin Wallace, who was a 2024 third round pick, a decent player. Their depth at that group doesn't really speak to me. They have Claude Chirelis and Jacoby Windman. Neither guy I think is going to earn any serious burn. Cornerback, you have J.C. Horn, another one of those guys that got in a car accident. I feel like there's been too many car accidents within the NFL circle in the last year or so. J.C. Horn luckily wasn't too serious, but he has been limited in practice recently, but he'll be a full go for week one. Then opposite of him, you have Mike Jackson. The depth behind them in terms of boundary corner to me is not good whatsoever. The next in line are Shamar Bartholomew and Corey Thornton. That's really bad. So they could get beat in the air. Uh, their safety group is Nick Scott and Trayvon Morig, who they signed to a decent contract. I like Morig. And then in terms of depth, you drafted Lathan Ransom from the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes in the fourth round. A little higher than I would have taken Ransom. I didn't love his tape, but he's a winner, and now he is their third safety. Their defense leaves a little bit, much to be desired, I would say. I don't love this defense, but maybe they outperform who I believe they are. I don't think so. And then I don't think their offense is one that's gonna, you know, keep stride with elite offenses that are ripping their defense to shreds. Now that we've looked at their roster and given me a sense of doom, let's look at their schedule and predict what their record will be. So the Panthers start the season with 2 road games against the Jaguars and the Cardinals before their home debut against the division rival Falcons, before going back on the road up north to play the Patriots. I'm going to say the Panthers start the season 2-2, which I think is hopeful. I think all of these games are winnable. I also think all the games are losable, so I'm going to split the difference and say 2-2. October starts with 2 home games against the Dolphins and the Cowboys before going back up north to face the Jets, and then they host the Bills week 8. I think they go 1-3 in this stretch. The most winnable games are the first 3, but I think probably the Jets is the one that they got to have most. However, the Jets one is on the road, so maybe it's not as easy and they get one on the Dolphins or Cowboys or something. Anyways, 1 win. November sees them travel to Green Bay to play the Packers. I think they're missing out on snow there, which is a good thing for them. Then they host the Saints, travel to Atlanta to play the Falcons, travel to San Francisco to play the 49ers, and then host the Rams week 13 to close out November. I have them going 2-3 in this stretch. I think they beat the Saints, and they could beat the Falcons, 49ers, or Packers. I think most likely is probably the Falcons. Final stretch is a late week 14 bye, and then that final push against the Saints, Buccaneers, Seahawks, and Buccaneers again. It's going to be tough for the Buccaneers to beat the Falcons, or to beat the Panthers 2 games in 3 weeks, okay? I will say that. However, I think it's what happens, and I do think they sweep the Saints. The Panthers coming off a bye late in the season, I think that's a win. So I'm going to say they go 1-3 in this stretch. I have the Carolina Panthers going 6-11 in 2025, which is not great, but I do think there are promising signs. I think 6-11 means that Bryce Young was serviceable, because if Bryce Young is bad, this team is a 3-win team. They have a terrible defense. Their wide receivers are pretty unproven, and the only proven one is like 35 years old, and Adam Thielen. Not 35, but he's up there. And they've just got a lot of unproven commodities around the roster, including Bryce himself. But a 6-win season probably means Bryce Young was about league average. So I think that's who Bryce Young is. He's 5'10", he's smaller, he has limitations, but a league average quarterback, a game manager, that's about all the Panthers can hope for. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think of the Panthers. 6-win, sneaky, gritty team, fun team, and then going into 2026, we can start talking about maybe they can sneak into the playoffs. Anyways, I love you very much. I'll see you next time. Adios.